I am fortunate enough that I have had the opportunity to work for a number of different industries, including Pfizer, as well as Memorial Sloan Kettering. And in both those cases, there was a lot of work involved with the development of different drugs, different medications. And lately, I've been thinking about that whole drug development process and asking myself, is there something that we can learn from that on how we approach L&D? So let's look at what's often called the drug development pipeline and see how this could potentially apply to us within the work we do within learning and development. The drug development pipeline has three major elements: research and development, clinical trials, and then ultimately approval and implementation. So let's look at each of those in a bit more detail. The world of medicine is increasingly investing more and more in the research and development of new drugs. I would assert today, within our world of learning and development, we are also entering a golden age of getting much more sophisticated with understanding and how to conduct effective research and get true understanding around learning and development. It's fantastic that we're investing more in understanding the basic research of learning, understanding neuroscience and how adults truly learn, exploring new technologies of how we can effectively deliver that knowledge to people. But we need to make sure that that application is very focused on true business needs, and that we're not just chasing technology and knowledge for the sake of it, and that before we even implement, that we think about some of the potential risk. So once we understand that business need, and we believe we have a way by which we can address it, how do we test that? How do we use a process like the drug pipeline process to go through some sort of trial phase? This phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 that we're exploring now in a bit more detail. As with clinical trials, phase 1 addresses the question, does it do any harm? Now you could think, what harm can training do? Well, inappropriate training can, for example, waste a lot of time and expense. It can also cause more confusion than understanding. And if you're not careful, it could conflict with either the policies or the company culture that you're trying to establish. Phase 2 is proof of concept. Does it really work as intended? To determine that, we actually have to have a measuring process by which we test, collect data, and then determine whether or not the outcome we're after is truly occurring. It also is a way to make sure that that measuring process that we're establishing is adequate to actually answer and address that question. If successful, we can move on to phase 3, where we do much broader testing of a larger number of people within our target population. This also allows us to further understand whether or not whatever we produced is suitable for that entire population, or whether we need to make adjustments for subgroupings within it. That could be people in different roles, people with different level of experience, potentially different cultures, etc. So now let's look at the final element of our pipeline analogy, where we look at approval and implementation. I believe for us within learning and development, there has to be an established approval process. There has to be some body, the equivalent of an FDA, that approves our work before we're allowed to launch it across the broader organization. One, I believe that this helps guarantee that we have a high quality product. And two, think about the marketing value. Would you take a drug if it wasn't signed off by the FDA? Why should somebody take a course if not signed off by an official body? And finally, post-approval, there needs to be implementation. But during that implementation, there still needs to be ongoing measurement. We need to have a central place by which that data is kept and analyzed, hence that we can make sure that what was right for the organization at one point in the past is still right for the organization now and into the future. That data needs to be collected, analyzed, brought back to the governance body, and we need to make sure we constantly have approval. This diagram illustrates the probability of success that any given drug will successfully move through these various phases of trials. If you look on the far right, it shows that less than 10% are truly fully implemented. I'm not suggesting that this should be the number for us within learning and development, But I believe right now, we probably are too free at getting to implement almost anything we want. So we need a more rigorous process in place. One final, but actually most important point, is that as with clinical trials, the focus always has to be on the patient. For us in L&D, the focus always has to be on the people that are depending on us to assist them with their learning and development. It's not about us, it's about them. As you know, this is just a brief video, not a detailed proposal. But going back to where we started, remember that question I asked myself. Is there something that we can learn from the drug development pipeline model that we should apply to us within L&D? I believe there is, and that we need to increase the degree of sophistication and rigor to the processes we use to develop and test the work we do before we launch it out to any given organization. Thank you for taking the time to watch this brief video. Please now share your thoughts so that we all can continue to learn from each other.